Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. Today we have another devblog, and this is probably the most anticipated devblog that we've had for update 1.77. Once the Challenger 1 was announced, there was a lot of talk around the town of what the Germans would get. Would they get the Leopard 2 on top of the Leopard 2K? What would the Russians get? Maybe the T-80 to be comparable to the Challenger 1. What would the Americans get? A lot of people speculated that the M1 Abrams would make a introduction into the game. And people were disappointed by the Germans, but you never know. Have faith, maybe the Leopard 2 will come. They're disappointed about the T-64B, even though the BV was also probably leaked in a screenshot, saying that it might be in-game. But to keep expectations high, the M1 Abrams is coming to the game. The Desert Warrior is here, and he is here in force. If you don't know anything about the M1 Abrams, it is the main battle tank of the American armies at this moment in time. The American armies, or America in general, is seen as the hegemon of the world, meaning that the M1 Abrams is the gold standard for what you want in a tank combat scenario. Now, a lot of people have pointed to the Leopard 2A5, the Leopard 2A7, the Challenger 2 as the top dogs in the world right now, and even the South Korean new main battle tank. But the Americans, still being the world hegemon, at least in my opinion, they have the M1 Abrams. And that, to me, is what we should use as a standard for tank design around the world. Now, this isn't the one that is used today. This is the first production version of the M1 Abrams. After the MBT and the KPZ developments between the Germans and the Americans, both went back to their drawing boards and decided that what they wanted to do was create their own vehicles. This is where the Leopard 2 and the Abrams came from. There were two competing companies trying to create a main battle tank for the US, and they both made prototypes in the form of the XM1, and what happened is they tested them against the newly developed Leopard 2, and they went, I believe, with the Chrysler one, which I'll just check here, just so I don't get it wrong. Here we go. Testing both prototypes against the new German Leopard 2, US comparison purposes, and yes, they went for the turbo-powered Chrysler design, which was seen as more comparable to the Leopard 2 than the other design. So what does the M1 Abrams have? Well, first of all, you know that armor that we see on the Challenger. The armor which I have said, or railed about, saying this is a new step in, armor design. And to be quite honest, we don't know fully exactly how it works, even though people have tried to make claims to the contrary. Unfortunately, those claims are not 100% true. We do not know how this armor works. I understand that a lot of people are looking at pre-production versions of the Chobham armor, or whatever you want to call it, since it does have several names depending on which nation or who you're talking to. But the thing is, we don't know how it works. Especially in a production version of an M1 Abrams or a Challenger 1 tank. So we have that on the front. We have a very sleek design. We have a very sleek hull itself, and a turret which is pretty much one of the first ones which was designed like this to protect pretty much everything when it comes to the turret ring, a weak spot that was seen on many tanks earlier. It is very hard to actually hit the turret area, or the turret ring area, I should say, of the Abrams. It also is mounted with two 30 cals and one 50 cal for anti-air defense. Now, the 150 cal and the 230s might not be that useful, but they'll be useful against stuff such as AA around the place. It also mounts a 105mm. Now, this may be the one part of the M1 Abrams, the first variant of the production version of this tank, that people may look at and may not see as good as some of the other machines that we've seen. The Leopard 2K mounts the 120mm Rheinmetall gun, which is very similar to the gun which the M1 Abrams got upgraded to when they decided to produce M1A1s. M1A1s were upgraded to the 120mm Rheinmetall gun, the smoothbore, which is present now on the Leopard 2s in Germany, which is very similar to the Leopard 2K's gun, which we're getting in-game. So in that sense, the M1 Abrams is maybe not the gold standard when it comes to its gun, but because of everything else, including its frontal armor, which is obviously where you're going to have to shoot it, because these things are going to be running at you at speed. Yeah, so anyway, let's talk about, we've talked about its gun, we've talked about its secondary armaments, we've talked about its armor, let's talk about its speed. One of the things which separates this from a tank like a Challenger 1 is the absolute insane speed that it can find itself with. The Leopard 2K is faster than this machine, but only because the Leopard 2K had to sacrifice a lot to be able to sit that gun on its platform and also try and get rid of all of its armor. It is said that the Leopard 2K's armor is comparable to the MBTs, the MBT-70 and the KPZ-70. In my opinion, this is false. The armor is worse than what you find on the XYZs, and the M1 Abrams, with its armor, is just a hell of a lot better at what it does. So it has more armor, slightly worse gun, but it has a 1500 horsepower engine. It is a mammoth engine, and something that has become the standard for the Abrams series through its lifetime. And this means that the acceleration on this tank is insanity. It is an incredibly fast tank for being a 60-ton tank, and what that means is it has a top speed of 45 miles per hour, or 72.4 kilometers an hour, and it's not going to take that long to get up to it. At the same time, it can go 40 kilometers an hour in reverse, or 25 miles per hour. This means that corner peeking in this machine is going to be very, very fun. Yeah, that's just something to take into account. And the two machine guns are 7.62s, and then it has the 50 on the roof. So yeah, a multi-fuel, 1500 horsepower turbine engine. Something that is incredibly powerful, and I'm not exactly sure if we can compare it to anything that we've seen in the game. So yes, it is fast. Yes, it has great frontal armor. The gun could be better, but eventually we will get the M1A1. The way that they actually talk about it in the history section is something to be making sure to look out for. So, when we actually read it, here we go. Following this modification, earlier M1 units will progressively be upgraded to M1A1 standard, but this is a story for another devblog in the future. So, to me, that means that we're gonna eventually get the M1A1. It's as simple as that. So, don't just worry about the M1 Abrams. Worry about the M1A1. Another gold standard for what tanks should be in World War... I'm gonna say World War II, but that's wrong. In general human Earth 2000, like the year 2000. But I understand that a lot of people will disagree with me here, saying that the Leopard 2 is the gold standard, maybe even the Challenger 1 at the time, since the Abrams was a mid-80s tank when it came out. But I just fundamentally disagree. When you think of tank, you think of Abrams. When you think of armor, you think of Abrams. When you think of hegemon, you think of the US. Some people may disagree. They may believe that the Russians have finally got over their slump, which was the collapse of the USSR. You are wrong. Some people may think that China is rising against some of the world powers. You are correct. But at this moment in time, America being the world hegemon means that this is the gold standard until somebody overtakes them, such as China. So to be able to see it in-game is one of the most wonderful things, in my opinion, that we can see. It has a fully stabilized gun, as you can see on the move. It is going to be incredibly quick. It's going to have great frontal armor. Yes, it's not going to have very good side armor or back armor, but if you're running at the enemy and you have your flanks secure, which you should be able to do with experienced players at higher tiers, then therefore it should be okay for you. Something that is interesting is on top of the Chobham armor, which is new armor, it's only going to be present on this and the Challenger 1. There are a few other mechanics that they're going to add to the game to make the M1 Abrams a little bit more actually historically accurate. So I'm going to read this here for you. Although this protection feature will be represented in the game as well, aspiring commanders of the Abrams shouldn't expect guaranteed second chance from this protective feature. So what is this talking about? This is talking about this. So fuel tanks in the front of the hull were placed in armoured containers that prevent fire in the fighting compartment, and the fuel served as additional protection used against heat shells as well. One more solution that provided better crew survivability was separate ammunition storage that was also in armoured containers. In cases where the powdered charges were on fire, gas pressure was released through special blowout panels that were mounted on the turret and the hull. Such a system, if the panels functioned properly, would allow the crew to wait out the fire in the ammunition storage whilst remaining inside the tank, and after the fire was out, the crew could either leave the tank or drive it away from the battlefield. So as you can see, this is a feature that we haven't seen in game, and I'm wondering if it will use an FPE to actually be able to do this, or will this just happen by itself over time. I believe the way it works right now is depending on the vehicle, you have a percentage, and depending on the round that is hitting you, you have a percentage chance of your ammo exploding and blowing up the tank. So specific tanks, such as certain Shermans, in real life had wet racks, which basically means that it was very hard to actually blow up their ammunition storage, even with a direct hit. So this is modeled in game in the form of a percentage. So the round coming in has a percentage to ignite the ammunition in the tank, and then the ammunition itself has a percentage probability to blow up. And that is pretty much how it works on the numbers end. So when we look at something like this, this is taking it to a different level. It is trying to negate that probability, and meaning that hopefully, if it works well, it can be applied to other tanks that have it. So yeah, it's nice to see some other stuff, not just the M1 Abrams itself, but also bringing some ideas that may come back to be used on other vehicles. The camouflages that we see on the M1 Abrams are not that great, to be honest, but I understand why they are like this. So if we look at this, this is your standard desert camo. This is an incredibly green camo, which they've decided that everything has to be rusty on the Abrams. And then they have this camo, which is probably the one that everybody will use, or this camo as well. So yeah, these two are alright, but the desert, and especially this one, is not a very nice look. But it's going to be very, very powerful against heat, hash, heat FS, all of these things. But that's not the gold standard. Do you remember what we were talking about yesterday with the T64B, where the extra armor on it would be great against heat or hash or anything like that? Same with the ERA on the Magak. The issue that we're running into is that APFSDS is, also on the AMX30 with the ERA now. The issue that we're running into is the APFSDS is the round which everybody is deciding to use now. So therefore, those extra abilities don't really mean anything, even though they may look really nice. Now, we don't know how Chobham armor in-game is going to stack up against APFSDS. Since it's not really designed to deal with it, you probably think it won't do very well against it, but at least there's more of a chance for it than doing well, compared to all of the other vehicles that we've seen, such as the T64B and the Leopard 2K. So yeah, that's at least a hope. It is very surprising that they decided to go for this instead of the XM1, the XM85, or the XM2, but it is still nice to see it in game. If this is a comparable to the Challenger 1, I'd agree. I would say this is a comparable to the Challenger 1. What is just surprising is that the Russians are not getting their comparable, which in my opinion is the T80U, and the Germans aren't either. But we still have 10 vehicles or 11 vehicles around to see. If you missed the post yesterday, there was this Advancing Storm highlights, and they looked at the Dagor engines and stuff like that, and then they went through the vehicles. But they said about 20 new vehicles. So far, I believe we've had 9 devblogs. So that means that 10 or 11 or around 20 vehicles are coming into the game. So we need to see what those other 10 are. So yeah, that is something to think about when we talk about what is coming to the game. You never know what else might be coming at these top tiers. I hope there is a bit of love for lower tiers, since, well, it takes a very long time to grind out these tanks, and since if there's nothing new at low tiers, I won't be able to use them to grind out these tanks, but I will be aiming for the Challenger 1, and just because that is my favorite out of the bunch, and then secondary, I will be aiming for the Abrams. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time.